Hey guys, it's Christina. This is Vox and Guest, and I am joined from his automobile by Justin from Storm Kingdom. Is that your kingdom, Justin? Your car? Is that it?
It is. Yes, it is. My kingdom usually does about 100 miles an hour down the turnpike. So
there you go. Look at that. A kingdom with speed. You don't generally hear that. So guys, I know you know Storm Kingdom, so I know you know why I'm excited to have him here. Because as I just said to him, it felt like we booked this interview years ago, but it's finally here, so I'm very excited. But Justin, I do begin every interview with a really intense and personal question. Okay, so you may or may not feel comfortable with it, but just bear with me. I've got you. I will hold your hand through the whole thing, and we'll figure it out together. Okay? Are you ready?
I don't know. I mean, let's do it.
Okay. See, the kingdom makes him brave. So, all right, here we go. Justin, on an average day, realistically, how many pigeons do you think you could reasonably carry?
Well, are we going to go full Monty Python with that? Is that going to, will that be an African pigeon or would that be
a European pigeon?
A European pigeon.
You know what?
Do they have a rope?
Ooh, look at you with the qualifications. You know what? I am going to let you answer it in whatever format you choose, because again, who am I to argue with royalty? You can take it however you want.
Well, if we're going to go African pigeons, then I'm sure they're bigger and they can carry more rope, so we can get a top layer of them, holding some rope down and have the other pigeons attached to that. You get to a certain point, tie it off, get some more rope, get some more pigeons, and probably get a couple of hundred of them.
You've got like a pigeon Afghan that you're putting together here. Okay, so a couple hundred pigeons
Hell yeah.
You're gonna just carry around. Okay.
Well, sometimes the traffic out here is so bad that sometimes I got to go by carrier pigeon. So I just attach the car to the pigeons, and then they carry me up over traffic. And
I like it. Wow, this is becoming quite sweeping. I feel like this is no worse than any of like the Harry Potter movies, pretty much. So, I mean, the other thing we need to consider here is, what if it's a death pigeon?
I think there's only 2 of them. So,
two?
And if
JD is like, there is? Where's the other one?
I thought he said it was 2.
Neil technically would fit in under the umbrella. That's true. So, okay. So I think.
And if there's just 1 or 2, they can fit right here.
You see that? I meant in your hands, not in your car, but we've changed the question. I said you could do that, so that's fine. But okay, look at that. Justin is going to be hauling hundreds of pigeons, which may get in the way of your music. I'm not sure. But you know what? I like it. I like the idea of you maybe enrobed in pigeons. It seems so regal to me. It really does. And I gotta say, and thank you for putting up with my bullshit question, but I love the shirt, and it is especially apropos that we are going to be talking about your music today, because one of my favorite things about your stuff is how steeped in mythology it is. I am a huge mythology nerd. I've been since I was a kid, and I get that there's a lot of that in metal, but I feel like there's a level of detail to it with your music that kind of goes beyond. And so I was geeking out on that really hard with all the song titles and everything else. So I love that you have your Man of the Norse shirt on there. But before we get into all of that, I'm going to warn you. Oh, does it say
real
more?
Quick, yeah, it does. You can't really see it, but below it, my wife actually got me the shirt. Because at the bottom it says, "I fear Odin and my wife, and you are neither."
That makes the shirt infinitely better. And I love that she is putting herself on a level with Odin. That's pretty spectacular. I love it. I love it. Okay, see, shirt even better than I thought. I'm glad you gave us the below the camera line, because I had a feeling there was more, but I didn't know what it was. So But before, and as I was going to say, I'm going to warn you because when people's music lights up my brain like yours does, my interview goes all over the place. So I'm going to be talking a lot and babbling at you. So I apologize in advance. But let's start simple, okay? Talk to me about growing up in Detroit and your transition from classic rock to everything else and how you started playing guitar and all of that, because your musical journey is really cool on its own and kind of mythological in its own way. So talk to me about how you got started and all of that.
Well, the big thing, I guess, too, is that, my parents were, definitely hippies from the 70s,
Okay.
60s and 70s. And so they always had, they were always playing music. So we always had music playing, and they always encouraged me to listen to music and,
Cool.
Stuff like that. And I remember we moved from one neighborhood to another, and the kid next door came out, came to meet us, saw us moving in, and I think I was probably like 12 or 13. And at the time, the kid was like the coolest kid I'd ever seen in my life.
Okay.
Here he comes out, long blonde hair hanging down, got the jean jacket with Metallica patches on it, and Megadeth patches. And I'm like,
Yeah. With your Buster Browns and your bull haircut or whatever it was. Yeah. There was always that kid in the neighborhood where it was like, okay, they're from another place in time entirely, and I want to be that kid. So I know what you mean. So
yeah.
He came out and he changed your whole trajectory. He really did.
Yeah. It was really cool because he just came over and he was like, "Hey, what's up, dude?" And, just from right there, we became friends, and he didn't mind me like following him around. And, he started introducing me to like bands like Slayer and Megadeth and all that. And, I think outside of like Slayer at the first point, my parents, encouraged me to expand and listen to my own stuff. And,
Cool.
And I think it was probably the next year I asked my parents to get a guitar, and they actually got it for me. I think that Christmas.
Aww.
And I think that night I sat down and played till my fingers bled. And every night after that, I just kept learning how to do it. I would play. I just got, that's all I really wanted to do was learn how to play the instrument.
Yeah.
And, and that's, I was breaking strings left and right because that was all I was doing.
Wow. Okay. And you completely taught yourself. You didn't take lessons. Yep. Nobody helped you. Wow. Okay.
The funny thing was the only time that I actually did take an official lesson was in high school, and they had introduced guitar class.
Okay.
And by that time, my best friend and I knew how to play the guitar really well. And
in a couple of years, yeah.
And we were playing the guitar teacher under the table, and he was a classical trained musician, so we were annoyed the hell out of him because we were just playing power chords and solos, and and I was like, "Stop playing that! We got to play it like this." I'm like, play this chord.
Mm-hmm.
He thought it'd be funny and be like, play an E, play A minor, and all this. Well, okay. And then we, go right into solos, and we do it just so we get kicked out. And we'd go sit out in the hall for the next hour and play whatever we wanted.
What you wanted, yeah. The second the teacher tells you have to do it this way, they've lost the kid forever. And that's especially with music. Like, why would you take someone who's running and try to teach them how to walk? Like, it doesn't make any sense, So, okay, so crappy, non-flexible guitar teacher aside, you then, and I thought this was really cool, about your history with music that, as you said, you started out mostly listening to classic rock and whatever your parents had on. Obviously, growing up in Detroit, I imagine you had a decent bit of Motown, all this other stuff too, but and then you found Gothic music, and that seemed to just blow the fucking doors off the place because then I'm hearing about classical and jazz and rap and tribal and punk and reggae and swing and dark wave and all this other stuff. And what I love about knowing that is that when I listen to your music now, I hear all of that. So when you, not all, but most, or influences from all anyway, but like who got you into, like, what bands, what musicians got you into Gothic music? How did that happen? And then how did the rest of that education follow from there? Because it could have just been one new genre and then stop,
Right.
but it clearly wasn't.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, you know, definitely in Detroit, the big things out there had always really been like, you know, rock and roll, blues, you know, and then on the rise when rap came in, hip hop really took over.
Right.
And those were the biggest things that they were everywhere. And, you know, most people, that's kind of what they fit into, that, especially if you're in that area. And, you know, it was just, most of the music I already knew most of the big bands. And don't get me wrong, you know, I love the music and everything, but I just, you know, kind of felt like, kind of cramped with it. I wanted to start expanding.
More. Yeah.
And, so I started going out to the record stores and, you know, back when they still had those things.
Yeah. I miss those. I do. I miss those. There was something about it, you know, even if you didn't buy anything, just walking around for hours and looking at all the music, that was a good thing.
Yeah, a lot of times just staring at a cover, trying to figure out what do you sound like.
Yeah, it's true. Based on this picture, what am I going to get if I buy this thing? Yeah, it's true. It's true.
And there was just one day, you know, I saw the album cover to this band called Sunshine's Blind. And at the time, you know, goth had, you know, was kind of creeping in to the Detroit area.
Okay.
But you know, I still hadn't really known a whole lot of it. Like the bigger stuff that was out there was kind of like The Cure, or if you're going way out there, like Christian Death, and you know, and it was fine, but it just wasn't what, you know, I was looking for.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, I saw the cover for Sunshine's Blind, which, you know, kind of had this like these hills at night, and you can kind of see the singer's eyes kind of fading through that. And you know, I was just like, I don't know what captivated me about it, and you know, I scraped together the money for it, bought it.
Yeah.
And it was just so cool because, you know, I was kind of expecting this kind of kind of sound.
Yeah.
And instead it's screaming guitars, you know, these, it was definitely, you know, it was definitely like a music box, drums, but it was cool. It kept up with it. It wasn't just that straight same beat going over and over, and it was mixing it up. Yeah. And then you've got her, Caroline, Blind's music, her vocals, from, you know, this really goth sounding to this, you know, high pitched yells, and she could carry tunes. She could, you know, had this beautiful voice, and it all kind of wrapped into this really cool, really almost
anarchistic.
Yeah.
I never know what the word for that either, but there was anarchy involved. We know that. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
And it was definitely out of anything that, you know, I'd really been listening to, but at the same time, it had that vibe that I, you know, always liked.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, I was just like blown away by it. And I was, this is so cool. And so I started looking, you know, I really got into her music, had a couple more of her albums, and I kind of expanded into other genres, and, you know, and that really opened up to, you know, one big thing about Detroit was there's always a music festival. Free music was going on.
Yeah. And
because of that, I started going, hey, you know, if friends didn't want to go, I went, grabbed my skateboarded over to, you know, they would have blues playing over here. They would have reggae over here, you know.
All kinds of stuff.
And I just went and started expanding on it. And then, you know, I got into it. Then I would start to watch how the musicians would play, you know, and especially if they weren't like super huge groups, you know, I could get back and I could talk to them. You know, you know, they would introduce, this is how, you know, some of the scales we were playing for this kind of music. And
That's how
and
those are the teachers. Those are the ones, not the ones in the class. I mean, I'm not dinging music teachers as a whole, but generally people on the show, when they talk about their experiences, it's almost like they kept up with their music despite their music teachers, which is unfortunate. So, but you can't beat that kind of boots on the ground, just living in it kind of education that you're getting at festivals, just going up and talking to bands that are playing out. That's a whole other thing. So I love that.
Yeah. And, and I would hit music stores, and then, I sat down and, friends had instruments, and, I'd be watching like ska, horns and stuff like that were a common thing, at least back in, the 80s, 90s for metal and rock.
Right.
So I started, if a friend had something, be like, hey, how do you play this? And then they would start showing me, and I'd incorporate that. So I'd pick that up, and then I'd go find something else. So I'd go to the guitar store, music store, and I'd sit down and start playing on pianos, and, pick up a ukulele, pick up anything that I could get my hands on, cello.
I love this story because it's so, I hate to use the word because it's so overused, but like it's so organic the way that you got into music and the way that you evolved in music. Like I love that you were just in the scene, and I think what's great about that too is exactly what ended up happening with you, where you didn't just learn or like or identify with one thing. Again, I'm geeking out a little bit because having listened to everything that you've made, at least that you've released, like I'm picking out little like, oh yeah, okay, so I can hear this in here and I can hear that and there. And like, as you're talking, I just, I love how it folded into you musically. So, I mean, but at what point then did you start playing in bands? Cause I know it wasn't the greatest set of experiences because you seem like you were either like, they didn't know how to play, so you kind of became the teacher, or like maybe the creativity wasn't where you are, so you were kind of the one that was the workhorse, which that can kill it a little bit for being in a band,
I mean,
from experience.
I think the first time I started trying to get music, like a band together, I think it was like 16 or 17.
Okay.
But, just kind of some high school stuff, and then, and that's kind of when I started finding that, at least to me, I was finding that there's either technical players who could hit every single note perfectly,
that have
but
no
are not
passion
very
and no soul. Yeah. It's
And
like an AI musician. Yeah.
And then there were ones like me who were very creative, and I learned most of the stuff, but I don't really I'm not very technical on a lot of stuff, because I'm trying to produce sounds that I want instead of being technical about it.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, I think anybody ever given the choice between those two things would always go for the latter over technical. Like, because it's just, there's nothing, it's why there are some, I mean, I've gone out and seen bands and they were note for note. They were perfect, but I felt nothing. Like it was just, and it was, I think perfection is the enemy of emotion in music. I really do. But also, I mean, given the music that you put out, it doesn't, if it's true that you're not that technical, which I may or may not quibble over with you later, but, it doesn't read. It really doesn't. And it does not in any way impact the experience of listening to your music. So, but again, though, when you're just starting out, you're 16, you're 17, you're kind of getting your feet wet, that becomes more of a thing, I think, because it's like, well, should I be more like this technical person, or ideally you do both, right? But most people don't get to that point. So like these, I'm assuming were originals bands, because I can't really see you in a cover band. Yeah. Okay.
I've actually never played in a cover band.
You're like a unicorn.
That was the thing. I don't know. I mean, I've learned some of the music from like Metallica or stuff like that. It wasn't so much that I learned how to play the whole song. I don't think I've ever played a whole song of anybody's. And it was more of like, this is really cool. How did they do this in this part?
Yeah. So you're kind of deconstructing the songs for the bits that you wanted and took. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, because you don't, and I mean, we're gonna do song in a minute. Everyone in the comments is always going, song, where's the song? We're going to do that in a minute. But I think one of the things that is most defining about you as a musician is that you, while seemingly having been influenced by many kinds of music, genres of music, decades of music, all of that, and being a multi-instrumentalist and all of this other stuff, you don't sound like anybody else. And nobody else sounds like you. And I love that when I find that, because it's rare. It's, especially being, if someone is within a genre, which I don't think you are. I mean, I hear metal, I hear some electronic, I hear folk, I hear all kinds of things. But if somebody was like gun to my head, what is his genre? I think I would probably be done for, because I don't think I could pick it. Like, I think your genre is you. And I'm always intrigued by that, because I know that I'm going to learn something musically. So I think, I'm going to stop us there. And because I think before we go any further talking about your music, I want to make sure that anyone who's watching this or listening to this who hasn't already heard you hears you, because it will make everything that comes after make a lot more sense. Because it is indescribable to me in the best way. And of course, I'm going to spend the next hour and change attempting to describe it. But I think that it's, it'll speak for itself too when we start this. So, before we play it, is there just any little quick thing that you wanted to say about Godless? Obviously this is, it's the first song, right, on Stormbringer?
Yes.
Okay, so the
album... It was
album,
originally a single, too. So.
Right. So the album, for anybody who hasn't already listened to it, and you will now, having seen this interview, but Stormbringer came out July 31st, I want to say. Yeah. And, it is epic. It is kick-ass. It is going to be a ride for anybody listening to it. It completely was for me. This is the first interview that, in prepping for it, I literally would stop the songs, some of them, maybe a minute and a half, 3-4 minutes in, and go back, because I felt like I needed to re-understand the beginning from the middle or the end. And and I don't mean that in like I didn't get it. It's like, wait a minute. We were here, we went here, we're gonna get into all of that. But like, this album is a fucking ride in the best way. All of Storm Kingdoms are. That's what you're getting. But this song in particular is, it is a little different. And I think it makes sense that it was a single, because, topically it's
very
more
different than.
Yeah. So if you want to say just a couple words about it, and then we'll play it and we can come back in and talk more about it. But is there any way you want to set this up for everybody?
Well, this is kind of my, soapbox, I guess, moment. Of I like to keep my own political views out of my music.
Sure.
And but it's just the last few years of how much violence, political violence, has been happening, and especially in the United States and worldwide too. Which has been going on, and it's becoming so commonplace that so many people now are shrugging it off. Yeah. When schools are being shot up, when festivals are being shot up, when there's riots on the streets, especially growing up in the 70s and the 80s and stuff like that, there were a lot of unrest, but it was not to this level. Right. Outside of the early, 60s and 70s. And so it's kind of reached out and touched me on that, and I felt that I needed to put something out there that conveyed my emotion of it without me going, full soapbox and start yelling at people, but instead trying to bring to light of what I think is happening in the world.
Yeah. No, that's beautifully said. And as you guys go into it, I think the key here is wherever you stand on anything, what Justin has conveyed, for me at least in this song, is the emotional impact of the world and what it's doing and what it's not doing, and, people's behaviors and reactions and choices and all of that. And it's just, So listen with that in mind. Let it just roll over you, because that's what it did with me. So just sit back, hang on to something, and here comes Godless by Storm Kingdom. I have to tell you that this song made me cry. And it made me cry because it is so intense and it is so emotional. And I love that you do that, as we've said, without putting much of a point on it. You know, that riff, on the piano at the beginning, you know, it's just so haunting and there's something so, portentous about it, you know, and then when the guitars come in and kind of take that over, and then you start with the vocals, you know, screaming and growling. And one of the many things I love about your music is that you have this ability to take your voice and just make it buzz and vibrate and just resonate. It's almost like a woodwind, you know? And it gives the music such a texture for me. And then, I mean,
well,
this
that's
song,
actually one thing too. I was doing.
Yeah.
I do a lot with the vocals on my music. Is I'm not really traditional on that, where most vocals are like here above the music. I actually try to keep it blended into it so that it becomes part of the song itself, and
that's
not
right.
standing above.
No, that's right. And it's funny, you should talk to Steam Slicer because he has a similar approach to very different music, but the idea that not making the vocals so forefront actually allows everything to pop and come out more colorfully. And I love that choice because it almost makes your voice another instrument that's blended in rather than the focal point of the song. And I think that for the kind of music that you make, that it's necessary because there's too much going on in your music for it just to be about one element like that. But what's amazing is that there is so much to listen to in Godless and in all of them, really. I mean, you know, you've got kick-ass dueling guitars in there, which so anybody wants to come in and just listen to some really big fucking guitar solo, you get halfway through, you're in there. And then all of a sudden, I start hearing this beautiful voice. Who is she, Justin? Who is that? Because unless, you know, you have some vocal talents well beyond what I know you to have, I don't think that's you. So who is that? Because her voice is a real touchstone throughout the music, and I couldn't find anything about her.
It's actually just a friend of mine, and she doesn't really want to be, you know, because I keep telling her I want to put her her on and everything, and she says no. She just enjoys singing, so I
respect that. Okay, so you have a very talented and humble and vaguely shy friend, who's spicing up your music, but we don't. Well, whoever you are, mystery woman, kudos to you because I think when I first heard her voice, what came to mind was so fitting given your mythological ethos that she has this sort of siren song quality to her vocals. And so to have this voice just come in and kind of ethereal and floating above with these, you know, and you've still got all the grounding instruments going there. It's just, I love that I can get through 4 minutes of one of your songs and still not have heard everything that you're going to put into it or bring into it. And I mean, Godless does that. It doesn't do it as drastically as maybe some of the other songs that you've put out do. There are a couple in particular, like My Last Breath and The Fallen World, Osiris, that like really where I was like, what the fuck is going on? This is awesome. What is going on? But like, and I just want to be very clear when I say what is going on or what I mean it in the best way because it was all good surprises, right? That you just keep popping things in there. But so, I mean, for a song like Godless where you're covering so much intense emotional ground, and you could have made it lyrically much more straightforward if you had wanted to, which would have been its own thing and could have been fine, but obviously would have maybe lost you some people and gotten you others, you know. I loved that you really were just speaking on an elemental kind of emotional level about all of this, you know, and that's what got me, I think, was just, some of it is the visuals, while you're listening to the song, even on Spotify, the choices and the clips that you used. It really does, because I think we can live in a world and kind of either become numb to things such that the world gets worse, or we numb ourselves so that we can function within it when we don't have control over what it looks like, And so for me, I know there's a lot of stuff that I just try to block out because I can't do anything about it. And this song made me feel all my feelings, which I could have been mad at you for, because damn it, there goes my defense mechanism. But I wasn't, because any time a song can move me like that and get me, in my feelings, as they say, and crying or reacting in that intense kind of way, I know it's done its job. So I was very touched by this, and I wasn't sure how much of the rest of the album was going to be in kind, but it's not. It's really not. Godless it fits, but it is, and it's sort of ironic to me that it's godless, because then we're talking about all these other gods and the rest of the titles and everything, right? But I thought it was such a smart choice to open it with that, because it was the most present reading of all of your stuff, which everything else is very steeped in mythology and all of that. So, I mean, before we kind of get into the rest of the album, how did you end up deciding to put that on the album in the first place, given that it is a little bit apart from everything else and could have really just been a standalone?
Well, originally I thought about doing that, making it just a standalone. But when I came up with the title, Stormbringer, I just kind of thought that fit the album.
Yeah.
Everything else did too, but I thought just the way what the song was about, the way it sounded, the emotions that I put into it.
Yeah.
I just thought that this would be the most fantastic way to start off the album, of just this is in your face. Mm-hmm. Here comes the rest of the storm, and brace for it.
Yeah. No, I think it was so smart, because and I also like that it brings us in, I mean, to get really geeky about it, if we look at the rest of the song titles on the album, right? You've got Hades, you've got Morpheus, you've got, the Valkyries, you've got Nurgle, and there's all this mythology from all these different places and everything that I thought was so interesting, because the second you put it in that frame, it gives the song immediate significance, right? But to begin where it could be about, if you really just listen to the music, something that was, ages and ages ago, but it can also be about what's happening right now, and it could be about what happened, 50 years ago. So it's Godless is kind of timeless to me in that way. And I think that that's one reason why I love having it on the album, because it also shows that you can talk about things that are very current and relevant and real and factual instead of just mythology. But I mean, so let's get into the myth stuff a little bit. I mean, are you as into it as it seems, or are you just plucking names out of? Okay, I didn't think so, because they're too thought out. But when did you get into mythology?
Oh God, as a child, really.
Was it that Valaire's book of Greek myths that we all got when we were 7 years old that I obsessed over? Or?
Oh, I was before that too. I mean, I grew up reading Beowulf, the sagas, J.R. Tolkien. Okay. My parents, were huge Tolkien fans. My dad used to play D&D. Okay. And so, that whole vibe of that was in the house.
Yeah.
And, so I really, that's something I fell in love with early, just along with history itself. Okay. I mean, I can tell you most of the battles from Sumeria up to the Roman era, and it's just, I get geeked out on that. My wife, not so much,
Yeah, but she got it enough to get you the shirt. And for that alone, there's a tremendous amount of support in there. And she had to know enough to know how funny that line was going to be. So you've at least rubbed off on her in the last couple decades. So I think you're doing fine. But so, I mean, when you are, God, I have like a bajillion things I want to ask you because like I could talk about just the songs and not even the meanings behind them for a couple of hours. So I'm trying to figure out how to rein everything in my brain into this conversation. But when you are writing, and one of the things that really stood out to me, you know, in your descriptions, your bios and things like that in different places was this idea that, you know, about a year and change, you decided, okay, you know, you had this background of music coming in. You had learned to play guitar 14, 15-ish. You know, started in bands, all of that. And then you had a friend that introduced you to DAWs and how to program music and all of that. So that, of course, opens up a huge layer of things that you were new to. And then you had this girlfriend at some point who worked in a studio. And so you got the education on the big boards and music production and, you know, what are producers listening for and all this other stuff. And then I guess taking all of that together a year or two within the last year or so, you decided, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to take everything that I know and I'm going to start making the music that I want to make. I'm going to start saying the things that I want to say and writing it and playing it and producing it and all of that and doing it the way that I want to do it. And I cannot imagine you being able to make this music in any other way than that because it is so, you have such a musical fingerprint. Like, you put on a song and we're going to know it's Storm Kingdom. Like, it's just, there's no, and that's tremendous. You know, it's you, and that's what I mean. You don't sound like anybody else and nobody else sounds like you. But, and I swear there's a question in here, but like, you coming from all of these influences and all of this musical background and I mean, you've taught yourself to play what, like violin and cello and piano and you have all these flutes. Yeah. I mean, all these different, and I mean, you have so many like world influences in the instrument choices that you make and everything else. How did you decide what your way of music was going to be? Because you could have done 1,000 things individually. You kind of ended up doing 1,000 things all together, which I love. But like, so when you made that decision in 22 to say, okay, I'm going to do Storm Kingdom, I'm going to make this my music. When did you figure out what that was and how did that happen? Like, how did your music become what it is? If you can even answer that question, which I don't know. That's a big question, I recognize, but.
I don't know. This is more of, I just sat down and started playing. You know, it was, you know, I mean, I love the heaviness of, you know, like doom metal and metal.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, contrary to what most people think, I think, you know, metal is very beautiful, and the music that can be produced from that is incredible.
Agreed.
From rock to you know, even some of the heaviest death metal.
Yeah.
You know,
no, I agree.
Just the intricacies of it is really mind captivating. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, you know, I love classical music and I love dark wave and synth pop and everything like that. And I was just like, I just started molding it. Instead of sitting there going, you know, I want to sound like Cradle of Filth, or I want to sound like Depeche Mode, or I want to sound like Mumscud or something. You know? I
love that those are the three bands that you and it's true. This is the mind of Storm Kingdom, folks, and when you listen to the albums through, you will hear bits of all of those things. I literally, listening to My Last Breath, and that's, I know the electronic mix, like, I'm like, I hear Depeche Mode. I do. I hear Depeche Mode. I hear Erasure. It was not at all something that I would have expected to find on one of your albums, but I love it so much. So, okay, I'm not going to get off on a tangent, but like when you said Depeche Mode, I was like 100%. So you didn't want to sound like any particular band or even any particular genre. So you just, sounds like you kind of discovered your sound by just making it. Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much. It was just, My music's really unconventional because I don't have bridges. I don't have verses really.
Right.
If it happens to come around, it's because I felt it should come around at that point.
Right.
It's, when I'm writing, I don't actually sit and say I should do this or I have this. It's more of, I might have like a sound in my head.
Okay.
And I'll sit down and I'll start writing. And as I'm writing, I have no idea what I'm writing. I just start recording. I start playing. I'll play this bit. I'll record it, pick up something else, put it on. And sometimes, I've even done it where I've written like a 7-minute song and decided I didn't like that, but I like that one little chunk from it.
Ah, okay.
And I got rid of the whole song, restarted, took that chunk, and then built around that again.
That makes a lot of sense because there were a couple of songs where I remember making the mental note, this could have been 3 different songs if it wanted to, but it's one song and it works. And that was especially where I, as I mentioned, like The Fallen World and My Last Breath, I had those moments where I was like, just to get into a little bit, with My Last Breath, it starts out to me very Nine Inch Nails. Like I have a real, and again, I always, people are probably sick of, they could say it along with me in the chat here. I say it on the show a lot. When I mention other bands, I'm not saying, okay, you sound like this or it sounds that song, but it's just like, I hear.
Well, that's definitely, that's your influences and you are going to take some of that sound with you, whether or not you want to or not, but that's part of music.
But the thing is that it doesn't, as I said, if I put on My Last Breath, I don't think it's a Nine Inch Nails song. I don't hear Trent, I hear Justin. It's a different thing. So, but what I loved about that song in particular, that those two are real favorites of mine. But with My Last Breath, starting out very Nine Inch Nails, very heavy. And there's so much going on in this song. Okay. And again, in the best possible way, because, your friend, I don't know what Madam X, we'll call her, I guess. So she is, comes in with this very, R&B kind of feel, and even you're singing on that song, I hear more synth pop, Depeche Mode, Erasure. It's got that kind of electronic synth, kind of that era of the 80s feel to it, which was such it was such a pleasant surprise because I'd already heard you growling. I had already heard you screaming on Revelation of Hades. I heard all of that. And so I knew you could do that and would do that. But then all of a sudden you're singing. And I'm like, okay, this is a completely different thing. This is a completely different feel. And it could have been such a mess, that song. Like with everything you were throwing at it, with the Nine Inch Nails stuff, with the Depeche Mode Erasure stuff, with the R&B stuff. Then I'm hearing like Bone Thugs and Harmony, like little bit of like gritty rap stuff later on. You've got a lot of pop stuff with Madam X's voice or whatever. And I dug it so much. Like I probably listened to that song 4 times, and I usually try to get through everything, especially when I know I have so many songs to listen to from somebody, because you have a lot of music out. And I was just like, I can't figure out how you made that song work so well. But so when you put that together, was any part of that originally a different song that you then did what you just said, where you pulled it out and layered it, or did you build it that way? Because we go from here to here to here to here to here, but we end up with something that makes collective sense, and I still can't figure out how you pulled it off. I really can't.
The funny thing is that on there I had put as kind of a joke of My Last Breath, the electronic mix, because it actually started out as a metal song.
Okay.
And I was losing the thread on it, and that's something I say a lot. Because if I lose the thread on something I'm working on, I put it down and I won't touch it, because I feel that it's my creative idea that's gone away. If I keep working on it, I'm going to destroy it. So I will stop, and I may come back like a year later, pick it up, and be like, hear it, and I'll be like, oh, cool, I'm going to go this direction.
Okay.
But I think I would have destroyed it if I kind of force myself to keep working on it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Cause you would be trying to make it something rather than letting it become something. Is that kind of okay. I love that. And I love that you could come back to it a year later and be in a place where you were hearing your song and figuring out where it needed to go next rather than trying to shoehorn it into something. So, okay. So like with that one, it was a metal song. You lost the thread.
Yeah.
And then did you put it down for a while or?
Yeah, I kind of put it down for a bit. And then, I was, I think I was at work and I was listening to Crystal Method and, just listening to that drum beat, I was like, oh shit, that would be really cool with this guitar.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, all right, but what if I put this on top of that? And then I just went back, stripped most of it away.
Okay.
Put down these, breakbeat drums on it.
Yeah.
And started kind of rebuilding around that. And, like I said, then it was just kind of like where I get into my creative side of just, like I said, I don't really, when I'm writing, I'm not thinking about it. I'm just playing. I get a groove going. I add on to it. I go back. And as it's shaping, I really have no idea. I'm just letting it, tell me how it wants to go. Yeah. And I'll build it from there.
No, I buy that 1,000% because I don't even know if you could do what you do that intentionally, like, and make it work. Then it might be a mess, because if somebody sits down and says, okay, I want to start off with something that's metal, but I want to bring in electronic elements and I want to bring in this funky bass and drums and I want to bring in, this very pop kind of, vocal and all this other stuff. It could just be this cacophony, but it just, and what's funny to me is that it is dissonant in its way. That there are times where what the vocals are doing and what the instruments are doing are almost at odds with each other from a theory standpoint, but it still somehow works. And that's why I had to go back and listen to that one so many times because I was like, how did he do that?
That's definitely one thing I do. I throw out a lot of the technical ideas, there's still, musicianship to it.
Sure. Oh yeah, a lot.
But it's just, when people say, you can't put these two sounds together.
Right.
I'm like, you might not be able to. I'm going to sit
No, but I love
if you do it in a traditional way,
right.
Yeah, then you can't. But
right.
If you can work around that, you can get these sounds that, that actually work, but they're so completely different.
That's right. No, and it's, I think that, because you have such a strong musical background and because you do know how to play things the way that they, quote, should be played, you're never going to make a mistake or at least not keep one where the ear just has to reject it because it's it's too wrong, quote unquote, because that's to me the line. It's not what the rules are of anything. It's what the ear can and can't tolerate, and I think that, listening to something like My Last Breath or The Fallen World, which again, I love. And again, I'm so curious how you pick the titles that you do because, it's called The Fallen World, but you have Osiris in parentheses or whatever. And Osiris, very specific, god of fertility, dead resurrected king. Like there's a whole host of stories that go along with that. And so when I'm coming into it with, knowledge of mythology, not probably as much as yours, but and going, okay, so why Osiris on this song or whatever, it gives me a frame to begin from and kind of an emotional color palette a little bit in a way. But again, that song begins, The Fallen World, almost like a medieval version of Nothing Else Matters by Metallica. It's got this, and it was like, this is so fucking cool. And again, that was when I listened to the intro, just the first minute and change a couple times before I went on, because I was like, this is so different from what came before it, and it's completely different from the next song. So it just, you don't we don't rest anywhere with you. Like, even from song to song within the album, we're moving. And I love that. But like, so yeah, again, medieval, you know, Metallica comes in. And then there are these like, almost like, I don't know. I love this personally, but I hope you don't find it, whatever. You know that movie, The Neverending Story?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you know, like the theme song from, and it's got all that like, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I'm getting like Metallica, medieval music, like Neverending Story, epic feel vibes. Then I got like some early Madonna, like Cruel Summer, Banana, like there was just so much going on there, and I'm like, he's doing it again. He's putting all of this stuff together that really has no godly business being in the same song. And then the guitars are very metal. Your vocals are very metal in that song. Growling and dirty and whatever. And then you bring us back to the beginning. And then her voice comes back in, but there's all this effect on it. And so it gets even more spooky and eerie and haunting or whatever. And then I get like a metal Linkin Park feel from like but that's what I'm saying. Like, there's so much going on, and it's groovy, and it's funky, and it's metal, and it's pop, and it's synth, and it's what the fuck, but like, I have never heard music like this, and I was so here for it. I really was, and I'm mentioning this specifically because A, I don't know how else to talk about your music, but B, because I know everybody in this chat is going, okay, I gotta listen to this now if I haven't already, because they all love, as I do, things that are new. You know, whether it's taking a genre and turning it on its head, or taking 50 genres, putting them in a blender, and then making this delicious single meal out of it like you've done or whatever. But like, I wish I could get in your brain just once when you're putting one of these songs together, because it's like, do you literally sit down and start playing and come out with most of the bones of like a Fallen World or a My Last Breath on the first go? Or are you building in sections? Like, how does that even?
It kind of depends. Like, sometimes I can actually get an idea or like the backbone of what I'm going to do. And I'll just sit down and play it, record it. And then I'll go back, and then I kind of take it all in sections.
Okay.
So I'm never looking at from here to here.
Okay.
I look at here to here to here.
Okay.
And, you know, it may come back around and stuff, but that's because I feel
it does often. Yeah. Yeah. You do that. But I like that because it gives it ties it together, though, when you do that. But you don't always, so.
And that's the big thing too, is that for me, and you kind of touched on it earlier, is that for me, I love music that makes me feel. That's emotion.
Yeah.
You know, cause, you know, I had a really rough childhood and I've been through a lot of things. So things that make me feel really touch me. And that's what I try to do is, you know, I pour everything that I'm feeling from that moment into what I'm working.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah.
You know, and if it's, you know, if I sit down and I'm happy, I'll bring that into it. If something's really hurt me, I bring that into it, and I bring it into, you know, 1,000-fold that. I want somebody who can sit down later and say, this is what you were feeling, or this makes me feel this way.
Yeah,
and,
no,
you know,
yeah, absolutely.
Really shocked me too is people have actually told me they see things when they've listened to my music, and I'm like, what?
Oh, I believe it. I absolutely believe it. I can't do that because apparently, as I've said before, my youngest tells me that I have aphantasia, which is like an inability to see things in my head. Like, I hear things, whatever, but even I do get flashes sometimes with things, and your music, for me, it's much more feeling, like you said, you know, and again, it reminds me of my interview with Steam Slicer, the idea that, you know, it was a similar kind of thing where there was not necessarily anything in the lyrics that gave away what the person was writing about, but there was so much emotion baked into the instrumentation and the choices vocally and everything else, that I was surprised and a little confused by how emotional both Steam Slicer's music and yours made me, because it was purely musical that was happening from, and a lot of times it's easy when somebody puts things in lyrics and goes, okay, this is what I want you to feel. This is the story I'm telling you. This is how it's supposed to go. That's different, because would you have felt that if the lyrics weren't telling you to? But with your music, there isn't that kind of sign postage, it's just about listening to it and experiencing it. And you've done what you wanted to do. You have, because I experienced the album, which sounds so cheesy to say. I didn't just listen to it. I experienced it. I felt it, and again, certain things, like I know that, you have written songs about, more for Winds of Ancient Ghosts, but like, about your friend who passed, where, okay, like this is clearly, these are two songs that are not coming from a happy place. But again, it's not laid out for anybody. It's to the music to tell us how to feel. And you've succeeded in that, because your albums, they make an impression. They do. Like, I come away from some albums knowing I'm going to remember them for how they made me feel. JD's, Death Pigeons, Rewiring of Humanity was one, Steam Slicers, Echoes of Infinity, another. These are another set, for me. So I love that you intended to do that and you did it and that I got to enjoy it, because that's not easy to make the music make people feel like that without any other context to it. So what's when you do that, when you have that as a goal, instrumentally, does that change how you approach things? Or is it just you're feeling those feelings and what comes next kind of just, it channels them? Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
That's kind of the big thing. Like I said too before, if I lose the thread, I stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
If, there's some days that, I just like, hey, I should sit down and write. I start with some music.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it. I'm not going to touch it. I might just play around on a guitar or something.
Right.
Keep my fingers loose and everything. But outside of that, I'm not trying to write. If I'm upset in the wrong way, I'm not going to write.
Okay.
Or something like that. And so it's more of like, I have to have a certain vibe inside and that creativeness that's ready to come out. Mm-hmm. And then I'll sit down and do it. And if I don't have that, then, I won't work on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. So you kind of protect your music in that way by making sure that you're in the right creative headspace and emotional space to make the kind of music that you want to make, where you're saying something. You might not even know what it is, but or maybe more than saying something, you're conveying an emotion or a set of emotions. Mm-hmm. And I always think that's magical because I don't know that there are many media that can do that the way music does. I know for some people, fine art can do that. I know for some people, dance can do that, and so, the arts are special in that way, but to me at least, music has always been the thing that more than anything else can connect you to somebody else, and I love that, I'm sitting on my couch in New York listening to music from some dude who's, down south that I haven't met yet. And I'm feeling exactly what he wanted me to feel listening to what he's made. Like that, to me, that's just, I know we kind of all roll that into being part of music, but I think it's worth acknowledging how tremendous that is sometimes and how special that is sometimes that, and I love that you are making music that is specifically designed to do exactly that, and you're very thoughtful about that. Even though you're not planning it, that's your that's your drive, that's your goal, that's your passion. And so you're only allowing yourself to make music when you can make music like that. So, I mean, given how prolific you are, then that tells me that, you've gotten pretty good at least, being comfortable in those kinds of head spaces and emotional spaces, or at least you've had enough going on where you've been in that position. But like, do you ever sit down to write something and go, I don't have it, where like you are feeling something, you do have an emotion, but you can't translate it into a song? Or have you always been able to put it out into the music?
I think for the most part, I've been able to do that. I mean, like the song, Valkyries, Almost My Time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had read any of the, what I'd written about that one, but that had actually, well, technically I almost died that night because, I went into hypertensive crisis, and it was so bad that the doctors actually thought I was having a stroke. And for 6 hours, my blood pressure was at 220, and I think my diet was like 180, 190. Mm-hmm. And, I ended up being in the hospital for 3 days. And I think probably within 6 hours of coming home, I sat down and started writing about it.
Mm-hmm. And was that, how quickly did that come? Because, I mean, to be so close to an experience like that, and again, I mean, the choice of title, you've said a lot just by bringing the Valkyries into it, okay, so these are, I mean, for anybody who's not, again, if you want to get into it more, but the idea of these, they're always women, right? These female guides that will bring lost souls to Odin's Valhalla, right? So the idea that, we are guiding you home, this is the end, and this is where you go. And so, I mean, even for someone who didn't have any backstory on what the song is about, between saying the Valkyries and then saying Almost My Time, you've told us a lot just with the title, and so, you're just coming off of this experience. It's got to be incredibly raw. I don't know that many people would choose to work that closely to it, but it seems like for what you want to do musically, the more in that emotional frame you are, the more honest the song that you make from it can be. So, I mean, was that a hard one to write? Did it come quickly? What was the process there?
That one was actually, it was kind of hard to write, but, I mean, if I could, if the doctors would have let me and I probably would playing my guitar and trying to record everything while we're working on this. It
may have been a wise choice medically for you to hold off on that until you got home. But yes, I understand what you mean. So, okay.
But yeah, that one was kind of hard because, I still hadn't gotten over what had happened, and I'm diving right back into what I felt and what had happened. And, it was just, I mean, there was actually times I actually broke down and cried while writing it.
Absolutely. Well, and I mean, I think what I'm hearing too is that you also process your emotions through your music. Because I think what happens to me in listening to you and in listening to your pieces is that it makes a lot of sense to me now, given what you just said, that you bring yourself into that space, which is so raw and so vulnerable, and you don't know what's going to come, but you do know that you are feeling something or some things very deeply. And so I now didn't think it was possible, but love your music even more, because what it's telling me is that what we get to hear and why it's so deeply affecting is you understanding yourself and your emotional process and putting it into music, which is remarkable and such a privilege to get to listen to that and to be allowed into someone's soul that way, you know, and it makes so much sense to me why every single fucking thing that you put out gets me the way that it does. Like, it gets me. It really makes me feel, you know, and it's interesting to be kind of, you know, placed into this empathic space of not knowing someone's story, but feeling someone's feelings, you know? So I could completely imagine that being so difficult because that's a terrifying experience. I mean, terrifying, especially with a family, you know, it's not just even about you anymore, you know, and then to be able to, and I can understand why you even wanted to be working on it while it was happening, because it's like, where do I put this? How do I process this? How do I turn this into something that, and I mean, you know, maybe making things into songs puts them at a little bit of a safe distance, right? That, you know, you have it and it's there, but you've gotten it out in a way. Yep. So when you are sitting there and going back and feeling those things, I mean, what was the structure of what you knew you were going to put down? How much of a surprise was that song to you as you were making it? Were you in the hospital going, this is a melody line I have, this is a structure that I want? Or like, you know, did you just sit down and all kind of, I don't think you can describe it, but I'm trying to get as close to figuring out how you translate your feelings into music the way that you do, because it's magical.
That one was, the only thing I kind of came in on that one was that I wanted this really chaotic sound. You know, and especially where, you know, like where I'm whispering, help me.
Yeah.
You know, that was really about the only thing I came in with an idea, because that was the big thing that I can remember. Screaming in my head was help me, but I couldn't say anything.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to bring that into the song.
No, it's very arresting, you know, and I mean, the song is so sweeping and it's so epic, you know, and it's, what's great is that, you know, even if someone never hears any of this and just sits and listens, they will get plenty out of it just listening to it as a straight old song, you know what I mean? And not even trying to feel anything from all of your music. But like, that whisper is like, you know, it hits you right in the stomach. And, you know, you've got Madame X in this kind of choral backdrop, you know, this very, you know, almost heavenly, but in a way sinister kind of feeling that you've built there. And there's an unease to the song. And as you said, there's a chaos, but it's controlled chaos. It's not, you know, and knowing what the song is about, I think it mirrors those feelings of being out of control and being terrified and pleading and, you know, being uncertain and what comes next. And, you know, I'm not ready for this kind of thing. And, you know, what I thought was really kind of fantastic. Well, there's so much I think is fantastic about new music, Justin, like really, truly. But this song, you know, and being the last song on the album, it was especially resonant for me. Valkyries seems to, in a way, almost combine aspects of every single other song on the album while still being its own thing. There are refrains that are reminiscent of things that you used in, you know, like The Harbinger of Balder or Godless or, My Last Breath or somewhere else, or you know, and the vocals again, her voice is a through line on the album, you know, that siren song, as I keep to think of it, you know, and she's doing
kind of funny because you actually picked that up, because I actually used a lot of the same sounds.
Okay.
From the other songs into that.
But
it doesn't.
That's very cool. That is a very nerdy little Easter egg. I'm very excited about that. But but what's great is that it doesn't, I didn't go, wait a minute, this is but it was like my brain remembered. it's almost like, you walk down this long road and then you look back and you can kind of remember where you were, but you're not in the same place. It's just, it brings it all together. But it felt like such a perfect denouement to the whole album that you brought all of it back, but in a way where it was a completely new song. And then to be saying what you were saying on top of that, I sat there when I finished it and I knew I had another, 10, 12 songs that I was going to be listening to happily, at that point. It's good when I'm excited for more music instead of like, oh, okay. But but I sat there and I just kind of sat there for a little bit. Like, okay. So that was a lot. And again, it's part of why I love doing this show so much, that even having researched you as much as I do, I always learn things when I talk to you guys here, just stuff, that little details and little things, that flesh things out for me more. And for an experience like this where I'm feeling your music as if it is happening to me rather than I'm just listening to it, I love having context for that, but I don't need it, because if I never talked to you about this and I had just found your album and then that was it, it would have been enough for me. But I'm proud of what you made out of that experience, and out of all of these experiences, really. A lot of us lose people and we don't write two beautiful songs out of that. A lot of us get angry and hurt and scared and sad and feel helpless and don't make beautiful music out of that, and I say beautiful, more in the sense of just emotionally what it creates rather than the sounds, although I think a lot of the sounds are beautiful too. But I geeked out so hard on this album specifically, Stormbringer. I really did, because, and you throw in these little bits like Lost in Morpheus's Dreams, right? Okay. That's like a 10-second song, right? It's just a little interstitial that's in there. But it's necessary because it takes us from the underworld, right? Okay. And the Hades Persephone myth is one of my all-time favorites. It was one of my first that I learned about, and just, how that plays in and everything. And
I'm especially attached to it too, being a musician myself. That was one of my most favorite, myths of it.
There's something about it.
And there's so many different versions of that myth. That's just, actually, have you ever seen, I think one of my favorite is, Jim Henson's Greek Stories. Have you seen that?
No, I didn't even know that existed, but okay, homework.
Oh, you've got to watch that. It's four stories, all set in Greek mythology. And, they do one of, not Morpheus, Orpheus.
Morpheus.
Yeah. And, that was just, that on there is my personal favorite of the four.
Okay, I will.
But
definitely.
If you get it, you got to check that out.
No. Now that I know it exists, I have to watch it. We may do that later, actually. But because there's so much packed into that myth, right? Whatever version of it you read, and again, depending on where you're coming from, it's going to be different. But generally, some of the details follow through. The pomegranate, and the sort of timeshare in the underworld that she ends up, and. To have somebody that is both, a figure of spring and eternal life, and also like the queen of the underworld, is that dichotomy is inherently fascinating and all of that. But again, I love that you ground the title the way that you do, because it makes me start from a different place than I would with a different title or an untitled piece. So we're not only talking about Hades, we're not only talking about the underworld and all of that, but these are revelations. Okay, so what is gonna be a revelation to Hades? Like right there, I'm intrigued. You know what I mean? Like, you think if somebody's gonna be jaded, it's probably gonna be Hades, right? But so, and again, that song, I think it was so smart to have it where you had it too, because it is one of the, and it's still incredibly complex because all of your stuff is, but it's one of the more straightforward Storm Kingdom songs, if there is such a thing. Because it is more metal. You've got all that growl, you've got the blast beats, the guitars are really driving everything forward, and then you do change it up midway, which I especially appreciated that it was like halfway through the song that it got all melodic and whatever, because I'm like, oh, there's Persephone, and then boom, you bring us back, and this idea of doing a tribute to like the underworld, it's like, but it's so cool. And then again, we get this little interstitial with Morpheus. So like, what was the thinking there? And like, what was the story back, in the background of that one?
For Morpheus or for Hades?
Both, really, I guess.
Well, Hades is actually another one that I actually put down for about a year and a half. I had started it off, and I kind of started off with this kind of black metal feel to it, and like it's a really traditional black metal feel to it.
Yeah.
And then I kind of lost the thread, but I liked the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And then I came back, and that's what I kind of started feeling. Kind of had in the back of my head of Persephone.
Yeah. It read.
And then I started rebuilding it around her.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I called it Hades, the revelation was this is the Greek god that basically got shafted the hardest of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
He was the oldest, but then became not quite the lowest rank, but Zeus took his spot.
Yep. He got completely usurped and blindsided. Yeah.
Even Poseidon got, the oceans and the earth shaker and all that.
He had something. He got a consolation prize. Right? Hades just got boned fully 100%. Yeah. That's true.
And so there he is sitting in the underworld, pissed off. Nobody comes to see him. Nobody likes him.
Like living in Jersey.
And then one day he finds Persephone, and things change.
Oh, yeah.
And he changes. Whether or not he knows it, he changes.
Yeah.
And, and I kind of think, too, that it was kind of like a reference to a lot of people in general, too. You live in your own little world, and your world might bump into different people, but eventually you bump into that one person, and your world changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then that's kind of where I rebuilt the whole song. And instead of just being, an aggressive song, I built it into a melodic, both aggressive and sad and loving at the same time.
Yeah. No, and that's what I mean about the titles, because I've listened to metal music, not in this community, but, since I got into it, just trying to broaden my horizons, where they'll use mythology, they'll refer to figures or whatever, but it's more nominal, it's kind of like, it doesn't have anything to do with the music, but that one, it definitely, the structure of the song represents the myth in a very meta kind of way, that we've got this angry, sort of blackened, darkened, feel. And then it does burst into this revelation of this figure who's just the complete opposite, right, of the guy himself. And he's infatuated with her. And I mean, one of the things I think I love the most about the myth is the idea that we can love something so much that we destroy it. We want it so much, or we need it so much that in having it, we almost destroy it, and that myth, the idea of just someone who is basically, was one small mistake right at the very end. She was almost out, she was gonna get out, and then, he knew that little pomegranate seed was just gonna be too tempting, and boom, he just, that was the thing that changed everything. And that's why I love mythology so much, is that it's as old as it is, it's still relevant to so much now, because it's really about human nature. It's all about human nature and foibles and choices and, and I mean, again, you don't just dwell in the darker myths, you are also bringing in, Well, I mean, I guess in a sense, even like if we're talking about Balder, the idea is like he was not a dark god, but what happened to him really sucked. So, it's still dark, right? Okay, but I think I wouldn't ordinarily say this, but to anyone who's going to be listening to Storm Kingdom's songs, which again, all of you now, right? Is I would recommend just maybe even looking up the names and the titles while or before you listen, because that context, it makes them richer than they already are, and if I didn't know about Greek mythology, I wouldn't have gotten what you were doing with Revelations. That structure would not have landed with me the same way. It still would have been great, but it's different. So I feel like this is one of those where people would do well to just, get a little bit of the background on the mythology. But so what about Morpheus then, since you went into Hades a little bit? Not literally, obviously.
Morpheus, that I kind of had where the dream of Morpheus, he was the god, the kind of lesser god of dreams and night.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was kind of where I made on the album was only like 12 seconds long.
Yeah.
But I wanted it to lead into something where it brings right into the next song, but it also I actually had the full song written out, and okay. I'm going to, I put it out. I've actually got a music video for it, and I'm going to, release the full, as a single. But I wanted it because a lot of the stories of Morpheus are that of a drop of him infiltrates, the dreams, takes root, but it's not something that just comes in like a dragon comes in and, stomps the village down.
Right.
He kind of worms his way in and kind of, and that's kind of where he leads from, the one song to the next song. And the songs start kind of going darker and darker.
It's almost like a subliminal message. Yeah. And I think specifically with Morpheus, I think of him as being very much a messenger, right? From the gods to the mortals, right? Because he can just insinuate himself into those dreams and then plant those seeds and then kind of dance off, and that it does turn. I mean, and from song to song to song to song to song like that. And to have it be the third thing on the album where you're making us turn already, like you don't give us much time to breathe. And again, I mean, My Last Breath it's not as dark as, say, a Valkyrie's, or a Balder, Harbinger of Balder, where like, we're really getting into the more sinister elements of those myths. We're getting into, and the music does get heavier. But again, you always have that, there's always light in there, which I think is so interesting to me. And especially apropos for Balder, but like, the idea that, that there is that siren song throughout, and it's beautiful, but it's treacherous, but it's there, and there is something luring about it, which is why I think it resonates as a siren song. So I know we're taking it out of order a little bit, but so we've talked about the first 5, I think, on the album. So then once you've gotten through the Fallen World, and we didn't really get into your ask, we were talking more about my reaction to it, but once you start talking about Osiris, where are you emotionally? What was sort of the emotional impetus for that song?
I don't know. There was more of I don't know, a couple of things that had kind of happened, and
just to be clear, in order to get into specific events, I'm just saying, like, yeah.
And a lot of things had been kind of turned, were kind of up in the air, and I wanted to capture that feeling,
okay,
I guess. And I just kind of sat down, and instead of really going heavy at first, it was more of like, I got my classical guitar out, and I just kind of started plucking away. And, and it was just, I kind of let things out through that. And as that was going on, I started, it's kind of like, oh, I think I should record this. I really like this.
Yeah.
And, which is funny because most of that song was actually written in this car.
Okay. Just
'Cause
driving or?
Yeah, I traveled kept my feet on the steering wheel and played and, no, just kidding.
You know what? Literally, if one person could come on this show and maybe get me to think that might actually be true, Justin, I think it would be you. I think it would be you. Like, if you had told me you had smuggled a guitar in, like, rectally or whatever to the hospital, I might have actually, just from sheer force of will. But okay, no. But I mean, like, was it sort of like it was occurring to you as you were driving, or like you literally sat in the car?
No, I literally brought. Actually, I do a lot of recording in my cars because, like I said, I'm actually very busy, and so a lot of times, I'm waiting at like doctor's offices, or I'm waiting to pick my wife up or one of my daughters.
Right.
And so a lot of times I'll bring.
Yeah.
And so I'll bring my portable studio.
Yeah.
And while I'm waiting, I've got my laptop over here. I've got a guitar or flute or whatever I'm working on, and I'll just sit here and play. And a couple of times I've actually, sitting there playing, and I've actually got lost in what I'm doing. And like one time I was actually at my wife's job, and I'm just sitting there. I had the windows down, and I'm playing. And when I play, I really get lost in my own head, and I'll tune everything out around me. Bombs could go off, and I'd still be sitting there playing. I'll happen to look up. Oh shit! I'm in heaven. Shit.
Yeah. The Valkyries, what are you doing here?
Hey, you guys want to hear a song?
Yeah. Hey, shout out to you. I wrote this one just for you guys. Yeah.
This was for you guys. All right. You guys didn't have to come down to hear it. I would.
Yeah, no, we're good. You could go back. We're good. Go away now. Thank you.
But this one time I was playing, and I had the windows rolled down, and I hadn't realized I actually attracted a crowd.
Oh, no kidding. There are people hunting down gigs, and you're just accidentally doing one in the parking lot without realizing.
Yeah, and I opened my eyes, and I'm like, holy shit. And there was 8 people standing there. And they just started clapping when I got done. I'm like, thanks.
Hi. Roll up the window slowly.
And I just started laughing after they. I'm like, oh my God.
That's so cool, though. See, you're a bit of a siren yourself. You didn't realize that, but you are. You just washed up on the rocks of Florida, watching you play your music. So, I mean, that's amazing, though, that you can record like that in the car.
Yep. And I do that all the time. I mean, I get funny looks, like guy that looks like me, and I'm sitting in the car with an Indian flute playing away, and I'll get some of the funniest looks because I'm just sitting there playing, and people are like,
what is happening right now? You could troll people so hard, like just you really could if you wanted to, and I like that. But that's one of the things that fascinates me with your music is that I will hear, and I don't even know is that a ney that you play? Is that the?
Well, I do have a ney, and I got a banzai, which is a Indian from the Indian continent. Flute. It's actually in the D chord.
Okay.
So it's it's a bass flute that I play, and then I've actually got pan flutes and a couple other flutes.
And you must have all different guitars too.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the classical guitar, and one of the neat elements too is that I will hear in a couple of songs sort of Middle Eastern influences. Yep. And there are some tribal influences in different things. And so it really starts to become like a mythology-based metal world music, rock opera kind of there's just so much going on. And you play all of that. You play the cello when that's the cello. That's you that I'm hearing? Yeah. Okay.
It's actually an electric cello that I play. So.
Not in the car, hopefully, but okay, so with that one, so Fallen World, that was mostly in the car?
Yeah, a lot of it was recorded while, I'm sitting in the car, and I'll just,
Okay.
plug everything in, and, I'm not really using speakers, and I do everything through, through distortions and all my pedals, but I have that directly into the computer,
Right.
which then I'll go back and then I'll add like different tones and add it onto that as well. Okay. And then at the same time, even though it's just me, I could have like 4 or 5 guitars playing.
Oh,
and I'll layer it all in.
Yeah.
So,
no, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and then on top of that, I'm mixing in with like cellos, violins, mixing that in. Some of the songs, some of the guitar sounds are actually an electric violin with distortion on it.
Okay. But it's you also have such an ear for where to put what instruments, what tones. You play with rhythm and tempo and dynamics. You are playing with your voice. And she's playing with her voice too, because she doesn't always have that lilting, operatic, ethereal. Sometimes she's singing like on Fallen World and My Last Breath. She's singing more of, like I said, more of almost like a straight synth pop kind of a refrain and melody, and with that timbre as well, which I find so interesting. And so, and again, there are a couple of moments in different songs across albums where you are doing that deeply vibrating, like low vocal, and it's arresting to me, when you do that, because you do have moments where you come in and you'll be whispering. And it's interesting also where you place those, because sometimes they're on their own and you can hear them very clearly. And sometimes you're doing it in the midst of all of this chaotic instrumentation, and it really makes you laser focus on it, because there's something about all of this cacophony, and you're drawn right to that, but it's almost like, I got the image of like just now of like, a scene in a movie where, it's something apocalyptic or whatever, and people are running for their lives, and then they find shelter just for a moment in somewhere close, and they have that quiet, but in the background, you still see all of this chaos behind them. And like, you have all these moments throughout your albums where, you really are picking us up and putting us in different places emotionally and sonically, and it's fascinating to me.
That's like Man Hill in the River is actually a Sumerian legend, about one of the main goddesses.
Right.
And through that, for the most part, it's instrumental. And some of it, I actually have my vocals in there, but you can't hear it.
Okay.
But I've got it mixed in so that it's actually adding, certain rhythms, and I put it into my keyboard, and I'm mixing it, but it's actually my voice carrying through it. And the only time I actually have a vocal spot is when I do a growl at the end.
Yeah, but that's a very orchestral song, though, that one specifically. And so I'm always sort of drawn to that, where you've got these very again, the siren, and the guitar. But very orchestral, and like, it almost even sounds, I'm assuming they're woodwinds that you're playing, but it almost sounds like bird song, and then to have the growling in there is like, I use the word a lot, but I don't know what other word to use, that idea that there's just this texture, to it, and that you're playing with it and mixing it such that it is almost like an instrumental piece, but it's a vocal. And I just, that one, I mean, that's not the goddess of wind, is it? That's a different myth. I think is it? Okay.
Yeah, she's actually the say Mesopotamian, because she's actually incorporated into, Akkadian, Babylonian, even all the way up into Persia. Who she was taken from each thing.
And kind of
and
constructed.
incorporate it.
Yeah. But that's why I thought, again, the titles all really do mean something. They're the fact that there are those woodwinds and there is almost that bird song and there is a very, it's the wrong word, but for lack of a better one, sort of an outdoorsy feel or a natural kind of feel to it. And I think that that's any song that can move instrumentally like a river and be named with river. Like, I love the way you make the titles matter. They don't always with songs.
That's like a lot of Dead Can Dance. I kind of got that. I love that they could do stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's kind of where, one thing I always incorporated was that, because they're very much a very feel. They incorporate, they layer, they're using vocals, not to so much even to tell a story, but just to bring you into the music.
Exactly. Right. And again, I mean, I think that you do that so well because it's not, a lot of the vocals on your songs are really just, ahs and sort of melody lines that aren't lyrical at all. But they do, if you took them out, the song wouldn't feel the same, and so that's where it really does have this global, epic, sweeping, mythological feel to it that, it is something that's almost ancestral in that way, or even, this sort of these vestigial traces that we have of the past that it kind of calls up where it isn't something that's articulated. It's just felt. And I think that it was cool for me listening through to everything because I started with Stormbringer. I always start with the most recent thing because I figure that's what the artist wants me to do. Sometimes I'm tempted to go back and sort of see where they started and where they went, but taking your work in reverse was really interesting to me because I saw roots of everything in everything else. So you're clearly in the same root structure, going into the same tree, but even Winds of Ancient Ghosts not being that much older an album, because that was September? It was so September to July. 10 months. So they came out 10 months apart, I guess. I could have gone the other way with that in August, September. But anyway, to have albums that are 10 months apart that are distinct the way that Stormbringer and Winds are. But where you can clearly see elements. I mean, again, you have a lot of mythology in the titles. There are a lot of similar musical elements, but I felt like you were doing more of the world music, work in, Winds of Ancient Ghosts than you ended up doing in Stormbringers. And I think the mythology even was a little bit, it was more geared toward Greek, I think, than, you had more Sumerian stuff on, So what was that album's story overall? Because I know that you have individual stories and then sometimes they're not necessarily related to each other, but going into putting Winds together, where were you coming from on that?
I don't know, really. It was more of just kind of let my creativity run rampant on that one.
Okay.
And, my original stuff, I didn't bring a whole lot of, I guess either Australia stuff to, the Fall of Rhea and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And, so I really wanted to kind of showcase a bit more of bringing in world instruments, and really mixing this heavier folk sound to it, and bringing in the metal and the electronic and the industrial sounds, and just kind of, I took some of my real favorite stories and brought them to life.
Yeah.
As things were happening, and especially too, because when I was writing that, it was kind of COVID, half of COVID was going on. And so I was really, diving deeper into that. I was thinking, wow, there's this plague. Let me capture that feel into this.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting because this album to me, thematically from an emotional standpoint, is a little more difficult to pin down. You've got, the jinns, for example, okay, like notoriously little bastards, these mischievous little shapeshifters, whatever. Like,
I took the jinn from this was actually the more traditional story of it.
Okay.
Of where they're more demons, and that when the jinn comes,
that makes more sense, actually.
It is more, that some kind of natural disaster is going
to befall you. Yeah. Okay.
And so when they're seeing especially Persia, jinns were terrifying to a lot of the people.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, if you've seen this or somebody was whispering about that,
shit was about to get real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's why I kind of had that feel to it of just this impending doom.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense with the music. That makes a lot more sense, And again, that was the one where I thought you were playing the ney too, but that Middle East.
I'm actually,
you are?
I had the ney for that.
Okay.
And, that was, I completely blanked out on the name of those dancers. But, that's, I had the dancers in that, the whirling dervishes,
right? Okay, yeah.
And I was trying to capture that with the jinn, and then the just that dark but epic feel for it, and I was trying to bring that all in on that.
No, it does, and it they all, I think, do, based on the titles that you gave them, what you intended them to do. I mean, and it's that you do a lot more screaming and growling in that song than you do in other places. And again, that there's always that rawness and that intensity that comes from that kind of vocalizing. But what it's fascinating to me is that, again, you could put together a metal beat with very metal guitar. You have the ney going in the background, which, like, okay, that's adding a whole other flavor. And then, you're growling, but, like, again, we've got, especially like the outro of the song gets much quieter. And again, we've got the siren kind of vocal coming back in there. And it's mixing so many things, but they're all chosen so wisely that when you put all of those things make you feel together, it comes up with what you were describing about this feeling of impending doom and, chaos and uncontrollable damage that's about to happen. But it's also kind of lively. You know what I mean? So it's like, all right, but I mean, that coming off of, Blood in the Temple of Ur, and that's a little bit of a trickier thing to pin down. I mean, are you talking about like Moon Goddess Nana at that point? Or are you like, where was the mythology that you were grounding from there?
That one was more of a history. That was kind of the fall of Sumeria.
Okay. So you were literally taking the story more literally than mythologically at that point. Okay.
Yeah, that was more of where the Arcadians started coming in, and all the Canaanites and all that were happening, and the violence that was brewing right at the edge of the Sumerian Empire.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I guess your history geek came out more on this album than maybe on Stormbringer, but like, again, is that an oud that you're playing, or is that just the guitar? Because again, that has a real Middle Eastern. What did you do? What did you do? You're like, no, that was me in my car playing with my toes,
Well, that's the only way you play. I mean, come on.
I know, it's true. Wait, how else are you going to drive, right? But yeah.
I'm in Florida. Nobody even glances.
It's true. Florida man, and then it's you, but you've got your guitar and you're playing with your feet. But so okay. So since I made you giggle on that, what actually were you playing? What did you do? You must have jerry rigged something.
Well, that was actually it was kind of the, well, I really detuned my guitar down, and then
okay. Okay. Hey, neat effect though. Really, that really was like that worked really
and
well.
then I sat down and I just started playing with a lot of effects and put it in until I got the sound I wanted.
Okay, nicely done. You tricked me.
I've actually I do all my own producing and engineering, so that's why I do all that stuff, and I spend a lot of time. Like I write, then I go back and I spend even more time producing and writing and adding stuff and blending stuff.
Well, that's why it impresses me that you were able to come out with 2 albums so quickly. Because, I mean, just from the standpoint of time to write and record and then, mix, master, do all the production for everything, and then how complex all of your stuff is. Like, you've clearly gotten this down to a bit of a science because, I mean, these 2 albums were not even a year apart.
Well, the thing too was that, cause when I started, it was kind of on a lark. Cause I'd always been writing, playing and doing stuff and, and I kind of started getting back into writing again and, I started recording and kind of doing it just for myself. And, a couple of guys I knew, I was playing it for them and they're like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? You've got to get this shit out and start playing.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, somebody was mean to you, but then they're like, okay, they want you to do it, so we're good again. I don't have to kick anyone's ass for saying anything negative. Okay, so they really kind of pushed you to put it out.
So that's like, and that's why I put out, The Fall of Rhea.
Yeah.
By itself, just to see what kind of reaction I would get.
Test the waters a little bit. Yeah. Okay.
And,
so did you get did people get what you wanted from it? And did you get what you want from that?
Yeah. I mean, I was really shocked, when I'd put it out and, I had, this one guy, cause I put it out, started the Facebook stuff and, I actually had one guy write who was a truck driver and said, I heard this song and I couldn't believe it. And, there's so many songs out there, but for this I guess he's a long distance driver.
Oh,
and he was like, and this is true music to me. That's awesome. I can just play this over and over on these trips and I love this song. At the moment I heard it, I went to iTunes and I bought it.
Wow.
And my jaw hit the ground and I was like, holy crap. I was just flabbergasted, it was wonderful. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And to me, the biggest thing to me, I would love to have billions of dollars in music, but that's not why I do it. And it was just the fact that things like what this guy wrote.
Yeah.
That to me is what music is. And that's what I strive. I want people to feel it, to understand it, to love it. And not to say, oh, okay, this is a cool song.
Exactly.
But I want it to be music. Right. I wanted to be touching. And from there, that's when I started producing other songs. And the thing was too that, I kind of put these other songs, the next batch of songs out, kind of testing the water still.
Right.
But I had all this other music that was already done. Or mostly done.
We should mention, just for the sake of completion, this next batch of songs was Ancestral Glory. Okay. Yeah. So that was about 2 years ago now, right? And so, you had 4 or 5, I think 5 maybe songs on
5 songs on it.
But again, like, they're not simple songs. Those were longer songs. They were, again, very intricate, but I feel like it was you starting the path that you've now really kind of settled into. And by that, I don't mean it was any less than the other 2. I don't mean that it wasn't developed or anything like that, but I could hear you feeling out your sound as you went. Hearing that on the first EP, there are all of these germs of ideas that you're going to take and develop and, make even richer and deeper and more complex on each album that comes after it. I thought it was very cool that you had all the elements from jump. You knew who you were musically. You knew your mythology, background and your history background was going to be a big part of driving your storytelling. You knew that you were going to be using your music mainly to convey emotion. And I mean, the 5 songs on Ancestral Glory are all, again, all similar to almost, really ancestors kind of everything that comes after. But I mean, I could see especially where, that truck driver was affected because, first of all, I mean, you start the fall of Rhea very almost like in a less ruined and played out like Stairway almost kind of feel. It's got this very not quite medieval, not quite classical, not quite this, not quite that, but just, this guitar that brings you in. And, again, like it's got a cool effect to it where it's almost not a Doppler effect, not whatever, but do you know what I'm talking about? Like
right.
the audio. So did you, I mean, was that in the production, was that a choice that you made to kind of, yeah. So talk about that.
Well, that was like, I wanted this really like almost hypnotic sound without being.
It does. Yeah. It has that. Yeah.
And so, and I kind of wanted to not really be anything. Like you said, you were picking up on all these different feels. And I just kind of wanted it almost, almost like an ancient Greek sound, but without being an ancient Greek.
Right.
And
yeah.
So, it took a while to, get the right sound down, but it was eventually just kind of picked that up. And I thought that was just really set the table for what was to come.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
And that's why it kind of, it kind of filters through a couple times through the song. Because even in some of the other instruments kind of pick up that same rhythm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
That's pretty much that.
That was it. No, now you have to think of no, but I mean, again, like, and it's, I feel like there were more rock elements on Ancestral than the other two. But not in a way that was, again, you do still have a lot of piano. There's obviously very heavy feature guitar. You do have orchestral elements. This is, you're playing the cello. You've got again, all these different influences coming in. And I think that when you take all of the songs together, these could go in a box set, no problem. Like, and people to be able to sit there and go, okay, from, if you wanted to write a little story for each song, you could do it, but you don't need to because you've done that with the songs. The songs are telling the stories themselves. And again, I really do think that the use of mythology, the choices that you made that were specific, the fact that you actually bothered to have the mythology resonate within the music rather than just being a cool title, for all the stuff. And then the fact that there is all of this, I mean, these rhythmic influences that you've got, between metal and tribal and rap. And, I do hear the R&B Motown sometimes even, like, it's weird to think that, but I do, so rhythmically you've got all these different influences and world influences. Instrumentally, you have all of that. And then because the emotion is the thing that is shaping the song more than anything else, and you're not slavish to structure, you're not worried about, I got to put a verse here, or I have to put a chorus here, or what are we going to do for the bridge, or whatever. The songs kind of unfold, and it really, I think creating music from such an open and honest space, that's why, to me, it isn't like anything else, because it's really you. I mean, everybody's music is their music, but right. Your music is you. It's all of your influences, it's all of your experiences, it's all of your emotions, it's all of your processing, it's all of your interests, and it's all so tightly interwoven and in such a specific DNA kind of way that's what I mean. It couldn't be by anybody else, and I was not expecting to like it or love it as much as I do. I should have finished the sentence. I wasn't not expecting to like it. I was going to say I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I do, but then I changed it to love it because I more than like it. But like, I wasn't sure only because, again, these are not necessarily genres, like anything that begins in metal or has roots in metal. It's not stuff that I generally listened to before, March. And even within that, every single metal band that I've interviewed, when they more very clearly identify as some kind of metal, whatever version of it you want to call it, you're different from that too. And that's why when I said at the beginning that I could not pin you down to a genre if I wanted to. I mean, you don't either. And the great thing about it is it doesn't matter. You don't need one, but I've never heard such a combination of so many disparate things come together so well to convey something that was so emotional. Like do you recognize what you've done here? Or is it just me? Did you say yep or nope?
Nope.
No. Okay. Well,
just...
but I'm telling you. So, so now you have to listen to me because, and again, I mean, I know there are some songs on each album that we didn't cover and more just for the sake of time than anything else. Because again, I could have sat here and done a song by song with you and I actually really wanted to, but then I realized that the show would have been like 7 hours long and as patient as everyone is, you even have a schedule you need to adhere to or that wouldn't have been possible. But I mean, it's, I think it's very easy, especially being a solo musician, to not understand the impact that your music has on other people once you put it out, right? And so one of the things that I always try to make sure to do with this show is to make sure that the person who's given me the gift of their music gets to hear how it impacted me. Not because I think that I'm interesting or particularly, special in any way, but just because all I can do is speak to my experience of your music. But these are songs and albums that I'm going to keep listening to because first of all, each time that I've re-listened, I've heard new things. I've picked up new Easter eggs with the mythology. I've picked up new references in the choices of instrumentation or space or dynamic or whatever. And it's just, your music is the kind of stuff where like I could totally see, people have been doing the thing like, what is it where like when you listen to The Wall and you put on The Wizard of Oz or whatever and they line up or something like there's like, you know what I mean? I'm sure somewhere along the line is going to be like, oh my God, I was watching this movie and I was listening to, Stormbringer and it lines up but it's going to be like, whatever the cool version of Clash of the Titans is now or whatever. But I mean like, but because there's so much to it, it is cinematic, it is orchestral, it is epic, it is sweeping, it is sort of like, it is a little bit like the musical version of, like Hercules' Tasks or whatever, you've got all this stuff and I just geeked out on it so hard, dude. I really did. And I wanted to make sure to convey that to you for whatever it is or isn't worth because, it's just, I can tell how much work these were, and how much time must have gone into it and how much of you put into it. And a lot of musicians, even when they're trying to say something, they aren't this honest emotionally with their stuff. And I just love that you did that. And I'm grateful that you made it so I got to listen to it all. So thank you for that.
Well, I mean, that's the other big thing is that, like I said, I mean, I pour all my emotion into it. And the other thing is I write for me.
Yeah.
I'm writing it. I'm not trying to write anything for anybody, for any genre, for anything. I have this feeling in me and I go and I pour it all out as, it's to what I feel it needs and what I think the song feels it needs and then tells me to stop.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big reason too that the songs don't sound alike, so many bands and it's not a bad thing, but like Iron Maiden or any of these bands, a lot of times you have the first couple notes, you know who it is.
Right.
because they have a sound.
Right, right.
And that's, I know I don't really, because I'm never writing in a certain genre. It's
Right.
everything.
Right, right. But there's a difference though, because, and as I've said, I will know that it's a Storm Kingdom song, but it's not because it sounds like every other Storm Kingdom song. It's because, first of all, it doesn't sound like anything. So there's that. But it's also because I think when you put so much of yourself into the music the way that you do, we get to know you in the music, so it's kind of like, it's like seeing someone across a room and going, oh, there's Justin over there. But like, I don't know what story you're going to tell me today. I don't know what happened in your life in the last, couple weeks, months, whatever, since I last saw you. Like it's new, but it's still, you do have that fingerprint that I mentioned, but you manage to do that while everything sounds completely different. And I again, I'm not entirely sure how you pull that off, but like, if I'm closing my eyes and I'm hearing something that has, and maybe this is a good place to kind of, begin to wrap it up. But if I'm closing my eyes and I'm hearing something that has orchestral influences and world music influences and mythological influences and all of these different kinds of, percussion and rhythm and instrumentation and different, shades of vocals and vocalizations and two different voices and siren songs and growling and I'm feeling a lot, that's how I'm going to know it's you. And that doesn't have to sound like anything. It just has to have all of that you in it, and I think it's very cool that you've managed to convey everything that you have, and to do that again, mainly instrumentally, rather than taking the easier route and having the lyrics tell us what you wanted to say, because I think that's painting with a whole different brush, and I'm not denigrating lyrics at all, but I think it's harder to get people to feel instrumentally than it is to get them to have that frame that lyrics can give you to know how you want them to feel by the end of the song. So, I mean, I could talk to you forever about your stuff, and I may bother you in DMs at some point just to do that, but for the interest of time, because I know you were nice enough to move your whole...
Curious, if you ever want to know anything, feel free to write.
Oh, yeah, okay, people, you've heard it. He's opened the door for me to slide into his DMs, and so now that's going to happen. But okay, because I do know that you have a very busy schedule and all of that. And again, thanks for making sure we had guys. We were going to have an hour with the original timing of this interview. We were going to have an hour to talk, and I was like, there is no way we could speed this video up 4 times and it would not fit into an hour. So I'm very glad that we got the time that we did. But so, as you may or may not know, we wrap up every interview with a little segment we like to call In the Vox Seat. I'm going to ask you the same 5 questions that I have asked everyone on this show. And you may hate at least one of them, although you don't seem like much of a hater, so I think you'll be fine. But the first one is, if you had to sum up, and good luck here, Storm Kingdom's music in 5 words or less, what would you say? I cannot do that. But all right, take a crack at it. I have the feeling you might actually be able to pull the rabbit out of the hat on this one.
Bit of insanity.
Okay, insanity.
Creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And 4.
That was 3. Insanity, creativity, emotional.
A little bit more insanity.
A second dose of insanity. Well, you'll have to start another band called Insanity Overdose just so that Anger Overdose. I had to shoehorn Anger Overdose into every episode, so there you go. There's the AOD reference for everyone, yes. Okay, so a little bit more insanity, and you have one more.
And, I guess, love.
Okay, beautiful. anything that has creativity and emotion and insanity and love that's I'm Italian, so that literally describes my entire family. So I'm right there with you. I would agree with that. The only word I might have replaced the second insanity one was with moving, but that's me, my editorial balance. But I like the double dose of insanity.
Or
So
I'd say moody.
Moody.
Is very good.
Okay, moody works too. Okay. So we'll do 2 doses of insanity. We'll combine those, and then we'll put moody in there instead. I like that. Moody's good. Okay, so what is your favorite thing about being a musician?
Everything. You know.
Okay.
I don't always have to express myself with words. I can express myself with music. I can lose myself in music. You know, I tell tales. And,
Everything.
And I reshape, create worlds, that are my own creation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. I like it. So do you then have a least favorite thing about being a musician?
Money.
Okay. All right. So the business side, that's a common refrain on this one.
That or
you mean
stupid people that ask me stupid things about things, and it's just like, well, I gotta sit there and try not to be like, how stupid are you?
Oh God. Now I'm worrying that you were doing that for this whole interview.
No, not you. I mean, I get, just when somebody, oh, you play metal. Is that like, Green Day?
Yes. It's also like ABBA.
Yeah.
And it's also like Olivia Newton-John. That's what metal is. What are people, sometimes I think people are just, dropped from the sky from a great height, get up, shake themselves off, and then come over and ask you a question. That's impressive. Yes. Green Day. Okay. Cool. You guys didn't know that Green Day was metal, but now you do. Good job.
Yeah.
Okay, so stupid people and or money. I'm going to give you both of those because I don't know how you would choose. They could both be pretty awful, but okay. So this one I'm interested because I really, really don't know what you might say, especially given that you have so many different musical influences. But if you had to choose just one album to listen to for the rest of your life, what album would you choose and why? This is usually the one that people don't like.
I think I'd probably go with Danzig 3.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. There's a why?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many great music out there, but I'm a huge fan of Danzig, but it's really atmospheric. It's got a different feel. It's kind of like a journey.
Yeah. It's very theatrical too. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something, so it's not, I'm not going to have just the one sound. You're going to have different feelings, different emotions that happen on the thing. So, it's not just going to be this really heavy album all the way through, or it's not just going to be a classical sounding thing. It's a really good mix of different sounds that, they were capable of. And, and it's something that, it's one of the big CDs I listen to a lot.
Okay.
I just put it on and let it run, and
this is a fitting choice for you because it could describe your music if someone chose that as their desert island disc too. So I like that. I like that you have that version of that for yourself since we get that from you. So that's pretty great. So all right,
hey, I'd be happy on a desert island. Just give me my instruments and.
I know. You'd be fine. You just wouldn't have a crowd of 8 people, like swimming up to the island or whatever. It's just like.
I'll play it for the dolphins and the sharks.
There you go. You could, you could do your own Neptune thing there, but okay. We began with deep seriousness. We have to end with deep seriousness because what better way to bookend a show? So this has become a very hot button issue. I know you don't like to get political, but you're going to have to because Freaky Things and Dom are in the chat right now hyperventilating over what you're going to say in answer to this question. Your toilet paper roll, when you put it on the little holder, does the toilet paper come from over the top or do you pull it out from under the bottom, and why?
None of the above.
Or an other. What is your situation? Are you just a stick it on the back of the toilet tank guy? What's the... Okay.
I'm not personally, but my family likes to do that because nobody changes the toilet bowl roll, and I'll stick it up there, and if they don't like it, then they could figure it out because I'm tired of constantly having to put it up
All right.
there.
But this implies that you do have a preference. If your household ran
if they would
the
stick
way
it
you
out
want
there
to
without
do
me telling them to do it, I wouldn't care. I would just be happy that it's actually changed.
Okay. So you don't care which direction. You just want it changed and on the roll somehow. Okay. So spoken like a true dad. I get it. Okay. All right. So there you go. Dom, Freaky Things, you both win and you both lose because Justin
Unless you want to be an asshole, then you can tear it down the middle, put one over the top, and let the other one hang.
Oh my God. What have you wrought? There's probably that sounds like some sort of bathroom gin that we need to battle it all. Some horrible toilet paper
Or
demon
really annoy the next person, tear it apart, tie it up a couple times, wrap it around, go through.
Oh no. Oh no. Yeah. I feel like I've unleashed something onto the world that was meant to be kept quiet. There's going to be a song about this later while you process these emotions. I think battle of the roll or something. We'll have to think about it. Oh man. Okay. That is a complete humdinger of an answer. And I don't even know where we're going to put that in our count, but you have answered boldly and honestly as you've done with everything. And Justin, I have had such a good time talking to you about your music, and I'm so glad that you make it, and I'm so glad that you are who you are so that making it turns out the way that it does. And just please keep making stuff. I know you just had an album out, so we will probably have a while longer to wait, but
on September 12th, I've got another single coming out, which is actually going to be a mix of like dark wave, industrial, and metal. And it's actually another semi-political album or song that's coming out.
Okay. So. Okay. Look at this. We're wow. You made me speechless. Okay. When that comes out, please tag me. Okay. Cause I want to make sure I see it and Facebook never shows me anything. Okay. Deal?
Well, it's a deal. It's going to be, hopefully if everything goes all right.
Yeah.
It'll be, Fourth Watch is going to debut the video.
Excellent. We love Fourth Watch around here. So excellent. Okay, there you go. There's yet another excuse to watch Fourth Watch, guys. So thank you again for coming on this show and spending your afternoon with me.
For actually wanting to talk to me for over 2 hours. I didn't know I'm that interesting, so.
You really are, though. I could have gone longer, I'm telling you. It's just we keep putting out these Titanic episodes of 3 hours, so giving the audience a little bit of a breather there. But thank you again so much, and thank you guys for watching and listening to another Vox and Guest. We'll see you later. Bye.